It was October 26th, 2003. We'd been there for, we had been there since April, and it was around midnight, and we went out to our far western police station that we were manning, Abu Ghraib, not the prison, the police station. The prison and the police station are a couple miles apart, and the Abu Ghraib section of Baghdad had really been a thorn in our sides. We were always getting attacked there. And I say we, not specifically me, but all the military units, the MPs. We had Estonians out there, and every day there was at least one attack, and usually more than one. And this night, we were out there with our sister companies. The one, Rachel Bosveld, was with the 527th MP company. They were active duty. Our company, and then there was a unit from 3rd Brigade Combat Team, 1st Armored Division, active duty. They supplied an armored vehicle to protect the police station. Long around midnight, everything seemed to be going okay. We were doing our inspection. And then, like out of a bad TV Western, everything got quiet. And you knew something was going to happen because all the locals were off the streets, all the cars were off the streets. There wasn't a sound in a city area. And it's like, this isn't good. And then we heard a car coming from the east, from the center of Baghdad, through the marketplace, which was going to pass right in front of us. And right in front of our compound there at the police station were Jersey barriers. So a car couldn't turn across the Jersey barriers and come into the compound. So we're listening to this car and it would stop. We couldn't see it. Buildings were blocking our view, but we could hear it coming from a good distance. And it'd start up again, and then it'd stop, and then it'd start up again, and it'd stop, it'd be stopped for 4 or 5 seconds, maybe a little bit more. I mean, the drama was building. And sure enough, we see the car come up, and everybody is just keying in on this car that's up on the roof. And it stops right opposite where the entrance to the gate would be. Now, they can't get to the gate because the Jersey barrier's there, but it stops right there. And we can see the doors open on the vehicle. Everybody's keying in on it. And next thing you know, explosion after explosion after explosion. And we open up on the car. It shuts off its lights and speeds away. And, in between the explosions, we hear screaming. And from where I was with a bunch of other MPs up on the roof, we could look down on the courtyard where our vehicles were, and that's where the explosions were. Stupid move on our part. We parked the vehicles in the same spot every night. So anyways, 6 MPs from the Connecticut National Guard were down there, and 3 MPs from the 527th active duty were wounded severely. And under fire, they grabbed the 3 wounded troops, moved them across the compound into the concrete walls of the police station, and started life-saving first aid. Tourniquets on the guys' legs were shredded. So they started tourniquets on the legs, started IVs to keep them from going into shock. And at first they thought Rachel was knocked unconscious. There wasn't a mark on her. No bleeding, nothing like that. But then they realized, okay, she has no pulse and she's not breathing. So they started CPR. Of course, everybody's in full battle rattle, helmets, body armor, jackets, ammo, the whole 9 yards. So they're taking it all off. They find the tiniest of wounds underneath her left arm. And unbeknownst to anybody at the time, that piece of shrapnel had traversed her chest cavity and taken out both lungs and her heart. So she was dead on impact. And like I said, it looked like a pimple. It didn't look like a wound. But they CPR'd, a bunch of our guys CPR'd her all the way back to the combat support hospital. And She was pronounced dead there, and that's where they, told our troops that, you did everything you could, and there was nothing you could do to save her. So that weighed really, really heavy on the unit when you do everything right, and it didn't matter. We did save the two guys. We, as in the MPs from the 143rd, saved the two guys with their shredded legs. It kept them from bleeding to death, kept them out of shock. I believe one lost a leg somewhere down the road because once they got the combat support hospital, then they're evac down to Baghdad International Airport and then up to Germany. And we never see them again. That was a really bad night. Now, some of the MPs that were there that night, that did a fantastic job, under fire, had their police station almost blown up, taken down around their ears the very next morning. Suicide bomber with a SUV packed with explosives was driving down the street towards the police station, and the roof guard, Levi Saucier, keyed in on it. It just didn't look right, the gut feeling. And the other thing was, it's a dead end street. And once you go past the police station and all those civilian buildings on the opposite side of the street, there's nothing there but a turnaround. And this guy goes all the way down to the turnaround. And so Levi is getting hanky. The guy turns around. Levi shifts his machine gun, to track on this guy. And the guy sees him and realizes he's been made, hits the gas, but he can't get through the Jersey barriers. Once on the Jersey barriers, he's immobile. He blows the vehicle. There's some pictures in there.
He slammed into the barriers?
He tried, but he couldn't get through. And he was 50, 75 feet away from the front door of the police station and structurally destroyed the police station. Two of our troops were sitting behind what would be the front desk of a police station. That took the bulk of the impact. They got minor wounds. Levi, who was up on the roof in a fighting position up there, got blown out of the fighting position across the roof. And young lady who was one of the ones that rescued the soldiers the night before under fire had been walking right towards the blast, the door, had taken one step down the side of a hallway, and the blast came sweeping in behind her and missed. Andrea was living a charmed life those 2 days because she was sitting next to where the three wounded soldiers from the night before were, and no scratches. So one of the other things about the Jersey barriers, we had shifted from a manning the police stations to monitoring police stations. We were turning them over to the Iraqi police. And at this stage, we were just going in, sitting there, seeing what was going on, doing inventories, checking on arrests, administrative things. And the Iraqis decided, well, the Americans are out of the police station. We don't need barriers here anymore. And they brought in a big bulldozer and moved all the HESCO barriers we had set up and bulldozed them down the end of the street. So the front of the police station was wide open. Lieutenant Grube, who was company commander at the time, and Lieutenant Kerfoot, who was platoon leader for 3rd Platoon, who owned the police station, decided we got to get some barriers in here. So they went to our compound, a Warrior compound, and started picking up these concrete planters that were all over the compound and moving them 2 at a time and reestablishing the barriers. And they had just finished, like a day or 2 before, reestablishing the barriers with these concrete planters when the attack took place. If they hadn't have done that, all 6 MPs would have been dead because he would have rammed it right in the front door and taken the whole place down.
When the incoming came, was this a mortar or something? When this car came up, did the car have a mortar inside, or how did what delivery system?
The official determination was it was mortars, but we didn't hear any pops from any tubes. If it was mortars, it had to be 60 millimeter mortars because there was radar counter battery monitoring going on, and the 81s were a bigger signature and flew higher, and nothing came up on the radar.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying that there wasn't you don't have that. You have as the air goes over the rough fins and the holes in the tails of the fins, and there was absolutely no sound. Now, did they throw them a mortar up over the wall? Maybe. They found mortar fragments there, but this place had been mortared for months. So if you want to go find mortar fragments in the compound, you could find them.
Sure.
The actual determination was mortars.
When this incident happened, when the incident that leads to Rachel Boswell being killed, you're the senior enlisted soldier there. There are officers, but you're the senior enlisted soldier there. What was your role? After this happens and the response to it, as the senior enlisted soldier on the scene, what was your role in that time?
Well, we engaged the car, and of course, things were chaos. And from our vantage point, looking down where the impacts were, you could tell that help was going to those soldiers. You could see them being pulled out of the vehicle, or Rachel being pulled out of the vehicle, and the other guys who'd been standing next to her moved across the compound. And two other senior enlisted, two platoon sergeants were there, Sergeant First Class Lawler and Roddy Porter were there. So I knew that situation was well in hand, though the whole thing was chaos. Everything had happened so fast and so dramatically. And then I'm looking around on the roof, and everybody's just kind of, nobody's organizing anything. So I start, okay, you guys, you're looking this way. Somebody watch the back end here. Keep an eye on this. Watch the front gate, and just trying to organize security up on the roof. Lieutenant Grube, the company commander, went down to where the wounded were, and he oversaw what was going there. And then when everything kind of stabilized out, if you will, I realized that there was an Iraqi police officer out on the main gate by himself during this whole attack, and a little guard check out there. So I decided, oh, I better go see how he's doing. And I'm walking about halfway out to him, and next thing I know, I'm enveloped in an explosion. How close? No idea. How far? Again, no idea. You're walking along, and next thing you know, it's like getting hit with a wet blanket, swung by the Jolly Green Giant. And, I got my bell rung pretty good. My chin strap went into my chin and tattooed the dirt into my chin. Somebody thought I hadn't shaved the next morning. And I did a quick U-turn and ran back into the police station and put a concrete wall between me and everything else. And after that, things were sorted out. The good thing was troops without direction did what they were supposed to do. Nobody told them to start IVs. Nobody told them to start tourniquets. Nobody told them to start CPR. They did it. They rose to the occasion and, gave it their best shot.
One of the things, as I'm talking with Iraq vets, that seems confusing. I guess to back up a little bit, over the past years, I've been overwhelmingly talking with Vietnam veterans. And one of the comparisons I'm making in my mind is that in Vietnam, when you're not fighting the North Vietnamese, when you're fighting the Viet Cong, what's hard about that is you don't know who the Viet Cong are, right? Because they're not wearing uniforms. But reading your memoir and talking to other Iraq vets, it seems more complicated in Iraq, because you mentioned several times in your memoir that you're fighting. If I'm wrong, let me know, but it seems like the enemy on Monday could be different from the enemy on Wednesday. It could be different from the enemy the following Thursday. I
Oh,
mean, is that
the
right?
Iraqi
That you're
police officers set us up for any number of ambushes.
the Iraqi
These
police officers
the
did.
police officers, we got to go this way and not the usual way. And next thing you know, that police vehicle disappears and the military police vehicles are taking fire. Uh, I would suspect that somebody on the inside of that police compound at Abu Ghraib told them where we parked the vehicles, because that's where the explosions were concentrated, exactly where they were. Silly things that were said by Donald Rumsfeld. What was he? SecDef?
Secretary of
SecDef.
Defense, yeah.
SecDef. You know, we have liberated them. They're our friends. And it's like, dude, we just hammered them for 30 days, blowing up everything. Now they're going to be our friends today. And yesterday we were trying to kill them. You know, it was silly things like that, and things that the State Department would hand down to us on how we were supposed to do things. We'd catch the Iraqis in lies, and it was like catching a 12-year-old in a lie. It's like, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, that won't happen again. And we had to take it because they decided we were liberators, not conquerors. So these were our friends, and we were there to help them, and we couldn't act like occupiers. And they used it against us every chance they got.
Who was the enemy?
It it wasn't one thing. It was uh, leftover Ba'athist regime people who wanted to put Saddam back in power. It was Iraqi veterans that were hated us because we killed their friends. Uh, it was hardcore Islamists that didn't like a bunch of Christians and Jews telling them what to do. Uh, and as time went on, they started importing fighters from other countries. We were picking up Yemenis, Palestinians, people from the Balkans, uh, Chechens, anybody who would accept money or had the ideology that they wanted to kill Americans. Now, a friend of mine who was in a later rotation, they picked up a foreign national who had driven a suicide bomb truck trying to get it on into the green zone. And it blew up at the checkpoint. And the idea was he wasn't supposed to survive. He was a foreign national. And they actually saved his life. First aid, burns. And then his story was, I came here to kill Americans. And this was supposed to be, he was told by his, Islamists that this is a test run. We want to see if we can get a vehicle in there. And then tomorrow we're going to have you drive the real vehicle through, because we know we can get the bomb in there, and you park it in this spot and you get out and, we blow it up. Well, they made him a suicide bomber, but they didn't bother telling him. So that's some of the treachery that went on there. There was also organized crime. And, they did not like that the Americans weren't being bought off. They were used to, having their way. All we got to do is give money and we do it our way. And the Americans weren't being bought off. And so, well, the Americans got to go. That's why we had to get out. They wanted us out of Abu Ghraib, the village section of Abu Ghraib in Baghdad, because we were screwing up their economy.
So you're dealing with ideological radicals or religious radicals, you're dealing with criminals, you're dealing with people who are just angry. You're dealing with former, folks who had been with Saddam's regime. So, and you're in Iraq very early, and we'll back up and talk
Yep.
about the invasion and all of that. But by the time you come home in 2004, President Bush is still talking about, freedom is God's gift to the world. And, Iraq has the chance of becoming a model society within the Middle East. Let's put that stuff aside. Let's say eight months into your mission, 8 months into your tour, what for you was that war about?
8 months in, it kept changing. It kept changing by certain political statements, and then changing by what was actually happening on the ground. Now, in our battalion operations center, we had a large big screen TV, and it was either on CNN or it was on Fox News.
Yeah.
And it was, constant news in real time about the war. And that was one of our best sources of immediate intelligence, because if something happened in Baghdad, and there was a news crew close by, they would immediately cut to that, and we get a better handle on what was going on through CNN or Fox with these, stringers, local news reporters, giving feeds to CNN and Fox, because the report, we couldn't get a clear report for hours about what was going on, but we'd watch Fox and CNN. And then Mr. Rumsfeld would get on there and say, hey, we're going to wrap this up in 120 days. We only got 500, disgruntled former Republican Guard members that we have to take care of. And we're on the battalion talking, we're looking, I better go pack. We're picking up 500 guys a week. Either that, kill them or capture them. We're out of here. And of course, 7 years later,
It's a theme not only in your memoir, but in every discussion that I'm having with veterans of the Iraq War, of a huge disconnect between what people in decision-making positions, what they are saying or what they are requiring, and what is actually happening on the ground, and what every 19-year-old E3 can look around and see what is actually possible on the ground. Does that resonate with your experience of just this
yeah.
huge disconnect?
One of the, I shouldn't say one of the biggest problems, but the State Department, they seem to have this attitude, all we got to do is give them money and everything will be fine. And of course, they took the money, but everything sure wasn't fine. You can't buy trust. You can't buy friendship. And again, for those many months leading up to the invasion, we were bombing the heck out of them. And then the invasion happens, and we're tearing them up pretty bad. They fought that war with Iran for 8 years, never moved the line much more than a couple of miles. And we went in there and we were in Baghdad in a few days, and with a lot of violence. And it's like, oh no, they love us. We're liberators. Well, yeah, we did liberate some, but then it was like, okay, get out. Okay, the Sunnis had been running things under Saddam before we got there. The Shia, backed by Iran, were the largest population there, and they wanted their revenge for all the stuff that they had been suffering under Saddam and the Sunni regime. And when we were first there, and I'm talking the first few days, we'd hear gunfire all over the place. We'd hear explosions, and no coalition forces were reporting any contacts or very limited contacts. But we go out and they'd find bodies and blown up cars. It's like, well, who blew up the car? Well, it was Sunni versus Shia or something along those lines. and we find bodies and blown up vehicles and blown up buildings. And it's like, we didn't do this. So they were settling their own scores in the middle of us, and they really didn't want us there because we were meddling in their affairs. And again, the State Department, all we got to do is give them money, everything will be fine. And the Iraqis would lie to us, go in, do an inventory of police cars that we had given them in each police station. That was one of the things we would inventory. Where's car number one? Oh, Muhammad took it and he didn't bring it back. What do you mean he didn't bring it back? He signed it out a couple of days ago and he didn't bring it back. Well, did somebody go to his house? Oh, yeah, he's not there. He doesn't live there anymore. It's like, they sold the car. And then, okay, you've got 50 AK-47s assigned to your armory. There's 25 in here, and you only have 15 people on the road. Where are the rest of the AKs? Oh, they're in the shop being fixed. Well, each AK had been gone through by an armorer in our unit to make sure, because we had a shitload of AKs, and we only sent the best out after we inspected, our guys and our armors inspected them. And of course, an AK does not break. I mean, it's a soldier simple rifle. And they sold it. Oh, we need gas for our generator. Reasonable request. There's rolling blackouts here. We're bringing the power back online, but yeah, okay. So 250 gallons. 2 days later, tank's empty. We need more gas. Oh, wait a minute. And my sergeant out there is, trying to make nice with the Iraqis. He says, oh no, Mark, I stick the tank. The tank's empty. I go, oh, I know the tank's empty, but it did not go through the generator. Well, they need 250 more. I go, fine. Tell them to go find 250 on their own. And this just kept repeating itself.
Because all the stuff is being sold in the black market.
Oh yeah, black market, put in their own cars,
Put in their own cars.
wherever they could. A lieutenant colonel who was up north of us in Taji, who was a Connecticut resident, and I got to talk with him several times, was training the Iraqi 3rd Battalion. Might have been 5th. Anyways, a battalion, 500 guys. And he was getting equipment, food, salaries, clothing, everything for a 500-man infantry battalion. Well, he gets tapped for the Second Battle of Fallujah. And his unit is to go in and occupy all the holy spots so that the infidels do not desecrate their sacred sites. Forms everybody up, they're ready to roll, and he goes, I don't see 500 guys, more like 250. He turns to the colonel, 500 salaries, 500, food rations, bedding, rifles, ammunition, and half of it's gone someplace else. You can say anything you want, but the reality was so far from it. And as we were leaving, things were getting much worse because they were improving their tactics. They were improving their skill set. They were getting better outside support. They were coordinating within themselves much better. And now the next rotation is totally inexperienced, and the totally experienced rotation is on the way out.
Well, let's back up before you know all of this, and let's put you on the plane, and you're heading to Kuwait. You don't know anything that you've told me. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what it's going to be like. At that moment, when you're on your way to Kuwait, what did the war mean to you then?
When the invasion actually started, we were in Fort Drum, qualifying to deploy.
Okay.
And when we got activated in February, it was still a time when weapons of mass destruction and Saddam was evil in the area and needed to be dealt with. And, you know, we thought it was I thought it was a worthy and noble cause. Uh, Scared? Oh yeah, yeah. Chemical weapons, because I had gone through chemical weapons school, and I did not want to be trying to survive in that environment. And I knew he was going to be desperate. Uh, you know, but thought it was a noble cause. And then we got to, well, then May 1st, President Bush, uh, you know, gets on the aircraft carrier and says, "Mission accomplished." You know, we got it. And it's like, wow, okay, well, I guess we're going back to Fort Drum and getting out. Well, no, we didn't. And then May 10th, I believe it was May 9th, we pushed forward from Kuwait. And our information at that point was no, we didn't have any information. We didn't know what was going on. We were at Camp Pennsylvania out in the middle of the desert, and pretty much no contact for about 2-3 weeks with anybody in detail. And the kicker was, when we got to Kuwait, nobody knew we were coming. And then when we got to Camp Pennsylvania, nobody knew we were coming. So we reported into the MP Coordination Center at Camp Virginia. Who are you guys? They didn't know we were coming. But then 3 weeks later, okay, you're going north. Where to? Baghdad. Okay, we're in Baghdad. We don't know. Where do we report? Go to the airport and see if you can find somebody. Seriously? That's your 5-paragraph order? Well, we don't talk to them, and they don't talk to us. Wait a minute, this is the United States military. Sure and shit, we pull into Baghdad, we find brigade headquarters, and who you guys? We didn't request you. Well, go to the 709 Warrior Compound. Where's Warrior Compound? Oh, here's a grid. It was so silly, you'd swear it was made up.
I mean, what's going through my mind is folks who were so certain that Saddam Hussein still had the chemical weapons that he had.
Yeah.
They were certain that he still had them. So you're doing all of this training, preparing for that. Certain that, I mean, apparently, when we think about the planning, the soft skin Humvees, the apparent just complete lack of preparation for any insurgency. So, certain that this is going to be sort of a Persian Gulf point two, a relatively easy thing.
Yeah.
You mentioned the famous incident on the aircraft carrier. And yet these folks can't pass the word that we've got a National Guard troop coming in, and you've arrived in Iraq. No one even knows you're coming, let alone what to do with you. It's kind of mind-boggling, but it all kind of goes together of this theme of people in power who don't seem to have a clue what is going on, and who are just astonishingly incompetent.
That, and they look at PowerPoint presentations without looking at the substance of the PowerPoint presentation. Military is great on PowerPoint. And we were supposed to be a company attached to a battalion from the Tennessee National Guard MPs. It was supposed to be in support of the 18th Airborne Brigade. We were supposed to be their security. None of it happened. We ended up, after 9 months, being with the Tennessee National Guard only because the active duty battalion we were with went back to Germany. So we ended up getting with them 9 months down the road, but never with the 18th Airborne Brigade, who we were supposed to be with. Now, the 709th MP Battalion was out of Germany, active duty. They were supposed to deploy with their headquarters unit, their 3 companies, and get augmented by one National Guard or Reserve MP company. When we got there, they had their battalion headquarters, they had one of their companies, they had a company from another active duty battalion, and 6 National Guard and Reserve battalions, companies. So there were more National Guardsmen in the active duty unit than there were active duty. And the plans that had been drummed into my head, because I was an operations guy for years, just went in the toilet. And of course, then the 709th, oh, our year's up, we're leaving. Oh, wait a minute, you're our battalion. We've been working for you for 9 months. Oh, no, we gotta go. Have fun, catch you later, maybe next rotation. And all the training, all the stuff that went on in the Pentagon, the planning, and it was just throw money and people at it, they'll figure it out.
So we have the invasion in the spring of 2003, followed by, you know, the rapid collapse of the formal military in Iraq, followed by video of happy crowds of people. And so it seems like, oh, here's the liberation that we were told was going to come, followed by looting, followed by the insurgency. By the time you get to Baghdad, where were we? Were we had the insurgency begun? Was the looting still going on? Was the cheering still going on? Where were we in that trajectory?
They had already stripped all the buildings, so all the looting was done by the time we got up there. We were in, they call it Warrior Compound. It was I was told it was the Ministry of Art and Culture. And it was a number of buildings, some very large, spread out 20 or 30 acres, maybe a little bit more, walled compound, and stripped completely. Doors, windows, plumbing, chairs, whatever was in there was gone by the time we got there. The liberation was well over by then, and the resentment was kicking in. The insurgency was at a disorganized stage at that point. You know, some wacky guys would decide, okay, we're gonna drive this little cab up to this checkpoint here with an M1 Abrams tank, and we're gonna hose it down with the AKs. They responded with a 50 cal, and if they had a clear shot, they let them have it with the big gun, and that didn't work out. And as time went on, they refined their tactics, instead of doing stupid stuff like that. And then it was a lot of mortars, rockets, RPGs lobbed in at maximum range. Of course, the IEDs became very big because they knew they couldn't stand toe to toe with us. But they really did want to kill us. And so, okay, we can kill them without exposing ourselves. We'll plan IEDs. Now the IEDs, they started with an artillery shell, and not understanding how an artillery shell worked, they would point the artillery shell from the side of the road with the tip pointing across the road. Well, the blast's going sideways. It's not going forward. When an artillery shell hits the ground, it sets a detonator, but the blast is going sideways, unless it's a shape charge. So they realized, oh, okay, we screwed up. Now they were standing them up and putting them behind the guardrails. And that way they would blast out across the road. Our tactic was to drive like maniacs, swerving in and out of traffic, doing as fast as we can. Somebody gets in front of you and slows down, whack them in the butt and get them out of there, because he's probably trying to set you up for a hit. Well, then they started daisy chaining, three in a three in a row, 50, 60 feet apart. So their blast area was much bigger, and they didn't have to be that precise. Or they make them huge. They put them in a culvert and pack 5 or 6 or how many artillery shells. The ordnance was laying all over the place. And there was no shortage of artillery shells or mortar shells or anything like that. And they just make the bombs bigger. Now, we had a room at Warrior Compound loaded with AK-47s, RPG launchers, RPK light machine guns. And one day I was down there and I looked, we're really putting a dent. We've got a lot of guns here. And then I think it was we took off Uday and Quasi, they killed them, and there was celebratory fire all over Baghdad, probably all over Iraq. And they were shooting up in the air for hours, and everything from pistols to heavy machine guns. It's like, okay, I guess we really didn't put a dent in these guys. Ammunition and weapons beyond my comprehension. And you would and of course, the 50 cals, there are 12-7s, they're shooting up in the air, and every fifth round's a tracer. And you're just seeing this rain of tracers, and then there's another 4 rounds in between each one of those.
Yeah.
And this kept going on. Then they captured Saddam. Same thing happened again, which was months later. And then there was another celebratory fire. And I mean, it would just lighten up the sky. This was almost at the time we were getting ready to leave. And it's like, okay, they got Uday Quasi, they got this guy. Did they get, Chemical LE or something like that? Iraq won a championship soccer game against Iran. Celebratory fire, hours, stuff flying everywhere. And it's like,
Didn't make it down.
how do we counteract something like that?
Well, there's that, and so you're talking about the celebratory fire in response to a soccer game, the capture of Saddam, the capture of Saddam's sons. I mean, there are a couple things that are going through my mind, and feel free to respond to any of this. One is that, well, you're celebrating because Saddam's just got captured, he's out of power, and you're also bombing the folks who did that for you, so that kind of doesn't make sense. Then there's another thing that doesn't make sense is shooting all this stuff in the air, apparently oblivious to the obvious fact that those bullets are going to come back down.
Yeah, no, they
So
were racking up quite after each celebratory fire. The hospitals would report, quite a few, injuries and death. And if you know anything about an AK, they buck all over the place. And while you might be pointing it straight up at one point, by the time the 30th round comes out, who knows where the barrel is? And some of these guys, high on drugs or whatever, and they're just spraying bullets and they're hitting buildings and stuff. It was crazy. Now, celebrating taking out Uday and Quasi and capturing Saddam, that was the Shia celebrating their arch enemies being removed. But we're also rooting for the home team that's whacking Americans. That's a home team. We had an older woman call up about an IED in the Abu Ghraib section, and our units responded out there, and it's great. Citizens finally looking out for us. They're calling in an IED, to help us. And so EOD goes out there, disassembles it, and gets it out there. And the guys come back and go, "This is great. Somebody's finally on our team, looking out for us." No. The bomb was in front of her house. If they had detonated it, it would have taken her house out. She didn't give a shit about us. She didn't want her house coming down.
Yeah. Was there any point, I mean, at the beginning, was there any point, when you thought that that this could work, that Iraq could become, when a somewhat well-functioning country, not meaning on the order of Japan or South Korea, but on the order of a Central American country, a country that has a lot of problems but basically works okay. Um, did you ever have a feeling that that could be the case?
No. Uh, Went there with optimism. Because first we thought we were going to be part of the big war of the invasion, but that took place and was over by the time we got into Kuwait. And then with what we were being told and what we were being asked to do, it sounded, well, yeah, this is doable. We might be out of here in 4 to 6 months.
Yeah.
And then it just kept getting bogged down, and
By the
lack of
insurgents, by the
cooperation.
IEDs and things like that?
Yes,
Yeah.
that and the policies kept bogging down, and the Iraqis again. I liken it to a 12-year-old. Okay, you had four main power plants producing electricity in Baghdad. I think I don't know if we took out all four in the invasion or not, but they were bringing them back online. Well, that wasn't good enough. We want power all day, every day. Well, they never had power all day, every day, even before the invasion. But you guys got to do better than this. You Americans, you got to take care of this. We had this, and you got to give us back. And you gave me $500, but really it should have been 1,000, and you're paying me for 40 hours to be a police officer. Well, we only do 27 here, but we want the same pay.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever you gave them was never enough. Whatever you did could be turned around on you. Another MP incident. This was a different unit. They had overcrowding at a police station in the jail, and we were under Red Cross standards. So 20 prisoners, you're held over 24 hours, you have to have a bed, you have to have 2 meals, so many calories. And so overcrowding, so this cat, and now the locals are rioting because of the overcrowding and the lack of food. So the captain goes out and says, okay, we're going to take care of this. We're going to move a number of prisoners off to a central lockup that has room and food and housing. So he thinks they're going to be happy because their family members going to riot. Why? Well, the way you reduce prison overcrowding under Saddam is select the appropriate number, drive them out to the desert, shoot them, and come back, and we've solved the overcrowding. So they're having a fit. So he said, the captain, again, this wasn't our unit, informs him, okay, I'm going to take the leaders of the neighborhood along with the prisoners to show them where they're going, and that they're going to be treated well. Another riot. Why? Well, they're going to whack those guys and the leadership, the imams, the local leaders. So the day comes, there's a riot, they move them all out. The local leadership sees that they're in a prison, comes back, captain thinks, finally, they're going to appreciate us. You weak Americans, you don't know how to handle problems. No-win situation.
You've kind of been answering this question all along with the different stories that you've been relating. Let me go ahead and ask it directly, and then address it as you wish. But so the 143rd Military Police Company, right? That's who you're with. You're a Master Sergeant with that unit. So what was the basic mission of this company? That's the general question. And then you've kind of mentioned some of the particular things you did, but what was the overall mission of this company, 2003, 2004?
Again, it kept evolving during the course of 14, 15 months. When we got to Fort Drum, our mobilization station, it was supposed to be with the Tennessee National Guard, supporting the 18th Airborne Brigade as a brigade asset, coordinating and protecting the brigade headquarters and doing whatever assignments they gave us. Well, we get there, that didn't happen. And then it's like I mentioned, just go up there and, find somebody and they'll tell you what to do. And the initial thing was taking over the vacant police stations, which had absolutely nothing in them.
The Iraqi police stations.
Iraqi police stations. There was nothing in them. They're totally looted. And one squad would be manning the police station, roughly 6 to 10 people. One squad would be on patrol in the city streets. And then a squad from the 3rd Brigade, 1st Armored Division would have an armored vehicle there and a squad of infantry to protect the police station. And during that period of time, we were doing roadblocks, checkpoints, seizing weapons, more active in doing raids or providing security for raids, picking up people. And then as time evolved, the Iraqis started, populating the police stations. And our assignment was getting less and less on the street and more administrative. But still, there were raids, but they got us away from doing the checkpoints, because in doing the checkpoints, you cluster 15, 20 MPs in their vehicles all in one spot, and a great place for a mortar attack, RPG attack, or a suicide bomber. So they said, okay, we're not doing that anymore. And they left that to 3rd Brigade with armored vehicles, and because we didn't. And then as time went on, again, it became more administrative. That we would monitor the police stations, that we had providing them with equipment. We started doing more actual training with them, running a pistol range, which, here's a brand new Glock 40 caliber, shoot 10 rounds and you're good to go. They came to us, our unit, our MP company, because we had 7 state troopers, I believe it was 11 municipal police officers, and 12 or 14 corrections officers in the National Guard unit, lots of experience. And they said, okay, we need a training plan for the Iraqis. Well, they're all coming back with, 26, 20 weeks, and basically paralleling what you would go through in Connecticut if you went through the State Police Academy or the Municipal Academy or the Department of Corrections. And, I kicked it back to my guys. I said, look, they're not going to go for 26 weeks. Cut this down to bare bones of what they really need to do to get on the street. They're not going to go for the 26. So they did. And we cut it down to about variation between 12 and 16 weeks. They came back and said, okay, they're going to get 2 weeks of training. 1 day or more is going to be totally involved with issuing uniforms. And 1 day is going to be totally involved in issuing them pistols. That was it. So basically the ones that we had back then, or we trained back then, were organized, uniformed, armed thugs. I got a call from a European nation, computer call, about my book, and they wanted to know, well, what, the details of our training them, because they said, we've got all these refugees coming in, and they're saying they're former police officers, and that's why they left, because they were afraid, and they don't know anything about law enforcement. I said, yeah, well, that's probably true. And I related to them that, we were putting on the street armed thugs.
I mean, are these guys who just as easily, because you hear about these insurgents, I mean, you hear about former Iraq army guys, right, who throw their uniforms off they're
Yep.
not getting paid by Saddam anymore, so now they'll get paid to be insurgents.
Yes.
Are these guys, you can imagine them just as easily walking across the street and becoming insurgents so long as they're getting paid by somebody.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, we knew we couldn't trust the Iraqi police officers. Uh, it goes without saying, you couldn't, you could not trust them. And one of the things that they would sometimes fall back on was religion. You know, I
Inshallah.
gotta take care of, the homeboys. You know, you're infidels.
Oh. Well, and then also, I believe you mentioned in the memoir that phrase, inshallah,
Yes.
basically is like a religious equivalent of whatever or something
Well,
like that.
there sometimes you have to take it in the context that it's given. And sometimes you'll get inshallah, inshallah. And they heartfelt, it's in God's hands. I can't do anything about it. And other times it's, hey, shit happens. Inshallah. Uh, you got to take it in the context it's being given to you. And that was also another excuse for whatever they want to do or not do. Uh, I put together a briefing for the chiefs of police because they were getting whacked left and right. How to protect yourself, change, your driver, make sure you have an AK-47 because they were very big on pistols. Ranking officers, pistols. Police officers carry rifles. Chiefs carry pistols. Look, your car gets hit. You got to be able to reply with something as equal or close as you can to the guy who's shooting at you, or you're going to be dead. Inshallah. Inshallah.
Let's just say you're at the store a couple days after getting home. Somebody knows you. They know you've been in Iraq. You're standing in line, and the person says, "So what's going on over in Iraq?" What do you think you would have said at that time?
I would have told him it was a mess. Uh, I would have told him I don't see an end. Uh, Pretty much that would be my theme of the conversation. Now, when we got back, as you mentioned, people would say, "Oh, you were over there." I was asked to do a number of speaking engagements, and I'd relate to them the positive things about our troops. Every time they got an assignment, no matter how crazy it was, they accomplished it. They did what they were asked to do. We had 24-year-old staff sergeants running police stations and telling a 50-year-old chief of police what he was supposed to be doing. Of course, that didn't go over very well over there, but that was their responsibility. That was their duty. And they accomplished their missions. And it was such, in the ways of Vietnam, it was a squad and a platoon action war. Uh, Rarely did you see companies moving at a time, or never battalions until something like the Battle of Fallujah or the invasion. Everything else was squad level, platoon level, and that takes it down to the first and second lieutenants, and that takes it down to the sergeant first class and his three squad leaders. It's on a very low level with. Whereas if you're moving as a company, company commander says move, four platoon leaders say line them up, and you go. And this is where staff sergeants and sergeants are making life and death decisions. Yeah, we're going to go down this street. No, we're not going to go down this street. I don't like the way this looks. We're not going to do that. We just got hit. I'm in charge. I got to handle everything. I got to set up defensive fires. I got to treat the wounded. I got to get assistance out here. And it's all happening in a very dynamic way. Again, like Vietnam, at the lowest levels of of the ranks. And you're counting on these, 22, 23, 24-year-old kids and 24, 26-year-old lieutenants to rise to the occasion.